Affirm stock is up about 70% in the last month. There are two big reasons for that, and I've got an awesome person here to talk through one of those, or actually both of those.
My name's Napur. I run a part of the product org over at Affirm. We call it network growth. It's really the team that is responsible for driving the merchant integrations and partner integrations so that Affirm can be a payment method available to them. And so, we've been live with Amazon for a couple of years now, and we expanded our partnership recently to actually enable sole proprietors to be able to use Affirm at Amazon and actually make their purchases for their businesses.
To recap, you've been live with Amazon for a long time. They have nearly 200 million Amazon Prime consumer members who in various ways could use Affirm, which has been only consumer. And the big new thing is now that businesses, or to your point, specifically sole proprietors, can now use Affirm as part of Amazon Business.
Exactly. And that's really important since you think about who small business owners are, you think about sole props. It's actually really important that they have the ability to also finance the purchases that they need to run their business. And so that's a big part of even Amazon's business and something we're really excited to improve upon.
Yeah, in the IRS data, there are about 28 million sole props in the US, which, not as many as the hundreds of millions of consumers, but businesses have high levels of spend as well. One of the big things I wanted to jump in and was curious, especially since you're a product person, is what does it look like to move Affirm's product from supporting consumers to businesses? Because I believe, unless I've missed something, this is the first time you've actually supported a business payments use case.
Yeah, exactly. We've spent over a decade building our technology, learning from our transactional data, and we're able to leverage effectively everything that we've built from our standard underwriting model and our standard underwriting technology. But this process is slightly different from what we've done before. These are registered businesses with registered business addresses. And a lot of that is, what we incorporate into our new models. As you know, we also, for a consumer, contemplated a number of factors, but not only just the things limited to what a normal credit score or credit check would be. And so it is really challenging to actually think about porting your underwriting model over, making it very different. But what we find is that sole props and consumer have some overlap in the way you think
There's
about
certainly sole props and consumer are as close as a consumer in any business.
Exactly. And so when you just think about what is the natural progression of how we might expand B2B over time, you have to think about what you're actually good at, what your core competencies are, and where your initial wedge can be before you expand further. So that's why we also chose the use cases. It's closest to what we know how to do.
Yeah, and one of the big things about Affirm historically is that you're able to get pretty far with just a limited number of inputs, like maybe it's 4 or 5 or even fewer than that. I'm curious, for businesses, what are the key inputs? The owner's name, the business address? Are there other, is that like it, or what are the other kinds of things you need to pull in to make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of business data, but in addition to that, a lot of it is, again, kind of the consumer information, since it is a lot of consumer underwriting.
Do you rely, and is it a big component of the underwriting, the consumer's FICO or credit report?
For consumer underwriting in general, FICO is an input, but is certainly not the only input.
I will say more broadly for a lot of folks in the industry, trying to figure out how to underwrite sole props is very hard generally, or just any kind of smaller micro business, because they're so similar to consumer, but you actually want to input. So to the extent you guys are working on that problem and figuring out ways of doing it, it will be very valuable to Affirm to figure out how to do that. And now we're a couple weeks in, so I think it was available right around Black Friday for the first time. Curious if there have been any surprises or interesting learnings since you guys have launched.
I think the most interesting learning is that a lot more than sole props would like to be able to use this. And so just seeing kind of the demand and the intent has been really, really awesome. It's not how the product is built today, but I think it gives us a lot of, information to go off of in terms of future roadmap and where intent and demand really is. So I think we're excited about that.
Yeah. And as a product leader, I'm sure that's exciting and terrifying to be like, oh, maybe we should have like a major way of changing how we think about doing this. And then at a company level, it's very exciting to see, consumer micro enterprises may be moving up from there. I think I talk a lot about how a lot of fintechs at scale start to become multi-product companies serving multiple segments. So it'll be super interesting to see the extent to which this means Affirm might be moving into other areas as well. Although even just micro enterprises and sole props is a pretty big area. So I talked about Black Friday, and that's when this business product went online. Also want to hear about why Black Friday was just a good day generally for Affirm and BNPL. And this is the number two of the big reasons why Affirm has been doing well in the last month.
We really consider Black Friday to kind of be like Super Bowl. That's actually how I personally refer to it internally, because it's just a really important time in the industry. And it's also a really good time for users to kind of think about how they want to pay flexibly. We definitely kind of think of it as a really critical time for our customers and our merchants too, right? Like this is where so much of their volume comes from. What we've seen just in the industry, taking a step back, is that consumers and the way that they want to pay for things is fundamentally changing. Many people, especially millennials and Gen Z, are no longer willing to tolerate revolving credit cards and debt and the ball and chain that come with it. And that is simply unacceptable in an antiquated business model. And so what you're really seeing with consumers and BNPL adoption is the desire to pay more flexibly. And in particular for Black Friday, you might have seen some of the articles that came out from Adobe in particular, which really talks about how BNPL is up 42.5% year over year, which is staggering. When you think about Black Friday, Cyber Monday in general being up about 10% year over year, but then BNPL being up close to 45%. What that's really telling you is that during this period of time, users, even though they might be spending a little bit more with Black Friday, Cyber Monday in general, really want the flexibility because they're making so many big purchases at this time and have found that, being able to actually pay over time for these large considered purchases, for experiences that they might be booking travel for and actually doing, in 6 months, but they want to take advantage of the deal, or buying new homewares and take advantage again of the deal season, they're turning to BNPL. And so, yeah, I think Black Friday is where we often see the demand really materialize because it's just the shopping season, but really exciting to see that we've actually made our way into, being a preferred way to pay by users.
I've reached out, wanted to chat with you because I want to talk about the two things. One is the Amazon business partnership, and then two was just the secular growth of BNPL generally, and those are both very interesting and exciting trends. But then while we got this scheduled, a third thing actually happened, which is you guys announced a partnership with Google Pay. So talking about expanding the product footprint, or rather the network footprint, and you run the network growth team. Tell me a little bit about the new Google Pay partnership.
Yeah, we're also really excited about that. It's a pilot program, and we're excited to, partner with Google so that pay over time can be offered through the wallet. We're still in very early stages of our collaboration, and the pilot itself is going to launch in early 2024. But as I mentioned, a big part of growth in our distribution strategy is to increase Affirm's penetration through mobile and digital wallets. And so when you think about using Google Pay and the digital wallet, and users will have the opportunity to select pay over time, and Affirm will be an option. And so this partnership is just an example of how we're progressing towards that goal. We are very excited. It's really interesting that we'll be available on merchant websites in multiple ways with this type of partnership, and Affirm is really becoming ubiquitous. So we're very grateful for that.
Absolutely. And Google Play Store and Android devices are installed on billions of devices, and Android, the operating system, is installed on billions of devices around the world. Also, a little bit of a different approach versus Apple, who has their own kind of in-house BNPL product. Curious if you have any thoughts about how Apple decided to approach something in this space versus Google.
I think my personal perspective on this is it's really exciting that BNPL has made it so far, because there were so many, call it 9 years ago, when we were pounding the phones saying, hey, there's an opportunity where users really want to pay over time. You should think about this as a payment method. Most folks would always say, what firm are you talking about? Like, what is this place that's doing this? And so when you have kind of the validation where, some of the biggest companies in the world are really taking notice, and those who are really good at payments, it's validating. And so I would just say that, the more and more penetration of this is good visibility, and, we're excited to be a part of it in whatever way, shape, and form we can.
Yeah, I think one of the reactions to when Apple rolled out their BNPL features, like, oh no, this is going to be terrible for all the BNPL companies. And that could be one interpretation. Another interpretation could just be this product, this form factor, is a thing that is increasingly popular. We'll expect it to show up in more places. That means it's actually good for all of the players. And to your point, for a highly considered purchase, like maybe you're buying an engagement ring or an e-bike online, you're probably going to do that through a web browser, on Shopify, and very good chance you end up using Affirm. That's very different than using it for something where double tap the side of your iPhone to pay in 4 installments for a $100 purchase. So
I think that's right in terms of how you can interpret it. I think the other thing I would just add is that paying over time actually can take a lot of forms. So you're seeing in buy now, pay later quite a bit of sort of pay in for over 8 weeks as kind of the default. And that's even, the default for Apple Pay Later. But what Affirm does is Affirm actually has plenty of longer term lengths too. We underwrite 36 months, 48 months, et cetera. And so even while other companies are starting to make more inroads with buy now, pay later, underwriting really is very, very difficult. And that's where I think we feel like our suite of flexible payment options and longer term lengths and interest free is really compelling and different.
As BNPL grows, it's not all the products are not equivalent. To your point, there's actually some differentiation under the hood. So I don't know, anything else we didn't touch on that you think is interesting or would be interesting for folks in product or engineering or at fintech companies to think about?
Yeah, I think just the last one is that Affirm is also really investing in our Affirm card product, which gives users the ability to actually pay in full with kind of traditional debit instrument and then pay over time as well. And so just kind of, we're really innovating and kind of giving users full flexibility. In terms of something for your listeners, whether other product folks or other folks in tech, I think what I just encourage, everyone to really think about is how you can think big but ship small. Really think beyond what the immediate feature or opportunity is and like what it really can and should be, but then find that way to just like ship it as fast as possible, even when you're at these much bigger companies that have grown and grown and grown. I think that's what has kept Affirm such an exciting place to be at for 8+ years, is that we're still very agile and we have product areas that we move really, really quickly on no matter what. So it's probably what I would just recommend to everyone.
How does Affirm feel about in-person work culture versus remote? And has anything changed there dramatically?
Yeah, well, as a long-term veteran of the company, I just really remember the early days as being such a fun time, and it's quite comprehensive. It's your professional life, it's your social life, it's certainly where you got a lot of your meals. So that is
I've had a few meals at Affirm too.
That's true. We've shared meals at Affirm. I think, the company operates remote first, and we also are, have a number of our employees overseas as well. And so we very much feel like the way to collaborate and the way to kind of think about collaboration is to be very remote friendly. But we certainly enjoy when we get to spend time together in person. And we really do believe that there are certain collaboration exercises that just feel better in person, even if you can probably drive a similar, you can still drive the outcome in another way. I think it's really more the feeling for us. So there is a group of us that like to go into the office, a couple times a week. We just had our first Ask Me Anything with our exec team in person last week. It was the first time we had done that in so many years. And so I'll just say that, we're a little sentimental about it. We really enjoy when we get to do it, but we know that the way to really operate is to operate as a global company and really understand that there are systems and processes that we need to modify to be productive that, cannot be specifically in person.
So remote friendly, but still valuing the in-person connectivity. And it sounds like you in particular are enjoying being able to reconnect more in person with colleagues, which I can totally relate to. Well, awesome. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting about everything going on with Affirm.
Thanks for having me.